So I came across Lynn through working for Reignite Democracy Australia when we did this Freedom Summit in Sydney. And Lynn contacted us and beautifully offered to come and do a talk on EMR. So I asked her to come and give us a talk here at the group. Yeah, so she's been working in this field since 1996. So she has a lot of experience. She's been involved in or commented on the major political and regulatory developments of the last 2 decades. She's the author of 4 books on electromagnetic radiation, which are Wireless Wise Families, The Force Living Safely in a World of Electromagnetic Pollution, Wireless Wise Kids, Safer Ways to Use Mobile and Wireless Technology, and What's the Buzz? She is co-author of the paper Measurement and Analysis of Power Frequency Magnetic Fields in Residences, which are the results from a pilot study. She publishes a regular report in EMR and Health, and she was the Executive Officer of the EMR Association of Australia and Secretary of its forerunner, the EMR Alliance, for 9 years. And she was also the Deputy Chair of the ACIF committee that developed the code for the deployment of radio communications infrastructure, and Deputy Chair of the Communications Alliance Committee that revised this code in 2010 and 2011. She was a member of the Department of Health's EME reference group hosted by APHANSA for over 15 years, and she was also a member of the local government committee that developed the model on telecommunications and radio communications, DCP, a member of the consultative group for the development of the Australian standard for ELF, and she's also a qualified trainer and educator who has presented at conferences, Senate inquiries, committees, and numerous public meetings, and also has written extensively for newsletters and magazines and given media interviews. Wow. So she has a very experienced and extensive background, and she's going to take us through Safer Home, Safer Family, what you need to know about wireless radiation. So I will get her on the screen.
And we can give her a big applause when we see her.
And get me off. Why won't that let me make it bigger? Every time I go here, it wants me to do that. Oh, here we go. No.
Does it?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
All right, Lynn.
Yes.
Thank you.
The little box up there.
I will turn off my.
Oh, I'll just unplug my other phone. One sec. Hello, everyone. Can you see me now and hear me?
Yes, we can see and hear you, Lynn.
Terrific. Well, hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be talking to you tonight. You can hear from what Monica said that I've been around for a long time. I've been doing this for 27 years, and that's because this is something that is really dear to my heart. And I guess the most important thing for me is how people can be safe. So how can you make your home and your family safer for electromagnetic radiation? So tonight I've got some tips for you. So I hope that you're all poised and ready. Now, the first thing is, why would we want to do that? Why would we want to reduce our exposure to electromagnetic radiation? And why would we want to even think about making our families safer? Well, let me tell you, there are 6 good reasons. I hope you can see them here, and I won't go into too much detail, but there are a whole lot of reasons why we would want to reduce our exposure. And the first one of them is because of its links with health. And there are studies that show that it's linked with brain tumours, reproductive problems, especially male sperm, but also female reproduction too. It's linked with DNA damage, breaches of the blood-brain barrier, changes to cells, hormones and genes, and oxidative stress. So I won't go into that very much, but also it's linked with a whole lot of symptoms. So things like sleep problems and memory problems, concentration problems, pain and headaches, nausea, loss of libido or low libido, skin problems and fatigue. So some of the people here might be thinking, oh yeah, some of these ring a bell, and they are quite commonly reported by people who are affected by this sort of radiation. So as well as the health problems, it's been associated with various emotional and mental health problems too. And depression is one of the common problems, and believe it or not, even loss of happiness or reduced happiness. So I guess they go hand in hand, but it's interesting that that's what the studies have looked at. Things like addiction, well, that stands to reason, and irritability, anxiety, stress, aggression, behavior problems, all associated with exposure to this sort of radiation of the use of wireless devices. Now, as well as that, it has been shown to affect relationships and things like interpersonal skills. Well, that stands to reason. People's ability to connect with each other, their ability to read body language, and this is particularly true for kids. It's been associated with a lack of empathy and lack of attention and communication problems as well. Then when we go on to education, it's been shown to have, oops, that's not showing up for me. It's been, oh, I'm not sure why that's not showing up. It's been shown to have negative effects on education. So I'm sorry I can't show you that, but those are things like, again, inability, oh, there it is, inability to pay attention, to concentrate, poorer learning even, poorer motor skills, reduced logical thinking, reduced literacy, and ADHD sorts of behaviours and behaviour problems. So all things that make it harder for kids to learn and certainly harder for teachers to teach. Then we have impacts on the environment. So it's not just humans that are affected by this radiation, it also has negative effects on plants and animals and birds and insects, particularly bees and marine life and the atmosphere. So moving on. Of course, we know that it affects privacy and security because we know that, you know, with mobile phones, mobile phones can be tracked, they can be hacked. So there are all of these dimensions of this issue that really affect many aspects of our lives. So those are some reasons why we might want to look at this issue a bit more closely and why we might want to reduce our exposure and our perhaps use of some of these wireless devices. Now, you might think, well, we're already protected, aren't we? Because there's a standard in place that determines how much radiation we can be exposed to. And that's right. There is a standard in place, and it was developed by a government agency called ARPANSA, which stands for the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency. Now, that standard is based on an international standard that was developed by an international body called ICNIRP. So I won't go on too much about that, but it's really just to let you know there is a standard in place. But does that mean that we're necessarily safe? Well, no, not necessarily, because what scientists are telling us is that those standards may not be sufficiently protective. And this is a study that came out just last month, actually, by an organisation called the International Commission on the Biological Effects of Electromagnetic Fields. And what it said is that these international standards, again, on which Australian standards are based, are flawed. And they came up with 14 reasons to justify what they were saying. Now, I'm not going to talk you through all of those because we'd be here till midnight. But just to let you know, if you're interested in this issue, you will see information about this on our website under the blogs page. So where does that leave us? If our standards aren't protecting us, then who is? And the answer is, well, it's us. It's up to us to find our power, to take things into our own hands and do what we can to make our homes and our families safe. So let's look at how we can do that. And as I said, I've got some tips for you, 12 tips about how you can do that. So number one is to investigate. And that means find out what's going on in and around your home. So you can't fix a problem that you don't know is there, can you? That stands to reason. And this radiation is invisible, so you can't actually guess where it is. And if you look at something out there, like there's a box on the phone, the power lines, or there's a phone tower out there, or there's something I can see, the chances are that you're actually going to miss some of the things that are going on in your home. So you really need to know what's there. You need to know, are there any problem fields? If there are, where are they located and how strong are they? So how can you do that? Well, you want a good quality meter. This is a nice little unit that we have that measures your exposure, so it will identify what's there and it will tell you there's a problem or that there's not a problem, and then you can use that information to solve that problem. So you can use it to measure the equipment in your home, your beds, your child's classroom, and so on. So number one is investigate. Now, moving on. Number two is digital detox. So what you might want to do is take a look around your home at all the wireless devices and wireless tech that's there and ask yourself, do you really need it? Now you might think, oh yeah, I do need everything in my home that's wireless, but have another thing. Here's a wireless mouse. Do you really need a wireless mouse? Well, perhaps not, because you can use a wired mouse that will do exactly the same job, but not irradiate you. Do you really need a wireless keyboard? Well, no, same answer. You can use a wired keyboard that does exactly the same thing. So some of the wireless devices that you might see around you, that maybe you don't need at all. And you've got the picture. Right. Tip number 3 is to be really conscious about protecting kids. And you might say, well, yeah, I would do that anyway. But I just really want to make the point, because children are generally thought to be more vulnerable to this radiation than adults are. And that's because they've got thinner skulls. So more radiation is actually going to penetrate their skulls, penetrate into their brains than will happen for an adult. Another thing is that their cells in their body are growing and dividing much more rapidly than happens for older people and adults. And it's at that stage of growth and development that the cells are more vulnerable. So this is a good stage to be protecting kids from this radiation. In addition to that, they've got a lifetime of exposure. So we don't know how these kids are going to be in 30, 40, 50, 70 years' time, because people who are 70 now were never exposed to this radiation as kids. And another point that I think is really important is that kids need to learn how to use technology safely, because if they don't learn that now when they're kids, how are they going to use it safely when they're teenagers or adults or parents themselves? So that brings us to point 4. Now, point 4 is keep a distance. The closer a person is to the source of radiation, then the more radiation they're exposed to. So you want to keep it away from your head. You want to keep these sources away from men's testicles, because they've been associated with changes in sperm that are symptomatic of loss of fertility. You want to keep these devices away from the fetus, away from kids, away from the body, and away from other people. So these are the things in this picture not to do. Not to put it in your trouser pocket, not to put your mobile phone in your bra, not to hold it close to your fetus or hold it next to your baby. So keep it away from you. Now, my fifth tip is to reduce the amount of time that you're actually exposed to this radiation or using these devices. So you can see in this picture here, if you've got a child who's in bed with their mobile phone next to them, or maybe under their pillow, as some kids do, then that's a lot of time that they're spending in a fairly high exposure situation. So that phone really needs to be way away from where people are spending time at night time. Now you might think, well, I put it on airplane mode, so I don't have to worry. I can use my phone next to my bed as an alarm clock. But airplane mode doesn't always work. It used to, but in a lot of modern phones, they don't actually turn the radiation off in airplane mode. So you'd actually have to measure your phone to see if it was working. Now, if you spend a lot of time in your car and you've got wireless devices in your car, as most cars do, then that's a lot of time that you're being exposed. So you might want to look at getting into the settings and seeing if you can turn off some of those wireless functions. Right, so that brings us to the first activity of the night, and I have a challenge for you, and that's I'd like you to think about how you can reduce the amount of time that you spend on your mobile phone. So to turn that around another way, how can you reduce using your mobile phone? So the question is, what are the 3 biggest obstacles to you reducing your use of mobile phone, and how could you overcome them? So Fiona, I'll hand over to you to perhaps organise that for a moment. And I look forward to hearing what you come up with.
I think we're ready to keep going, Lynn.
Yep, okie doke. Good. Well, I hope that brought up some interesting thoughts for you. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a lady, and I don't know how we ended up talking about mobile phones. We often do. And she said, I just stopped taking my mobile phone out with me because I don't want to be contactable every minute of every day. And I don't really need it. So, you know, that's an interesting thought too, whether it's possible just to go without taking it out with you all the time. But just moving on to the next tip. Tip number 6 is choose radiation free. So there was a comment a moment ago about, can you get a landline phone? Well, yes, you can. And I'll explain that in a minute. But there are lots of technologies that are around the house, perhaps, or around it about, that are wireless but don't need to be. So I mentioned before the wireless mouse, when you can use a wired mouse, the wireless keyboard, when you can use a wired keyboard. What could you use instead of a wireless tablet? Is there anyone there who's got some thoughts? I don't know if I'll be able to hear you.
Using an Ethernet cord, Lynn?
Yeah, you certainly could, but you could also use a wired computer. So instead of having a device, because sometimes you can't turn the wireless off on a tablet either. So if you use a computer that has not got wireless radiation, then that's perhaps that's a way that you can reduce your exposure. Now, most modems these days emit wireless radiation. In fact, it's quite hard to get one that doesn't, but we do have radiation-free modems and routers that you can use to set up your home, so you can have radiation-free internet and you can have a radiation-free landline phone if you want. So it does go through NBN, and the lady who hasn't got NBN, that would be probably a conversation for another day, but you can connect to NBN and to the wider world without any radiation, which is what I'm doing tonight. I'm talking to you on entirely radiation-free equipment, and everything in my office, everything in my home is radiation-free. So it can be done. So that's something to think about. And if you're buying equipment, I think it's really important to ask yourself, is this equipment going to force me to use wireless, or is it going to allow me to have an alternative? So for example, if you're buying a laptop, you might look for one that's got ports that take Ethernet cables so that you can connect up with cables. Same with mobile phones. Some of them now you can connect an adapter to, so that you could even plug it into a modem and use it as a wired setup. And some of them don't. So there are lots of ways that you can buy equipment that will make it easier for you to be wireless down the track if you choose. So that's radiation free. Tip number 7 is to avoid gimmicks. Now, you might think, why is she saying this? But this is so important because it's a question that nearly everybody asks me. Now, could you go to a doctor and get a tablet that would fix every health problem that you or your family or your neighborhood has? And I think that you know the answer is no, of course not. You can't get one tablet that fixes all the problems. Now, it's the same with electromagnetic radiation. There is no one solution for everything. No solution that will be for, the radiation from a mobile phone or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or 4G or 5G or 5G, millimeter waves and so on. They're going to be different solutions for different situations. So it's really important to know that. Now, years ago, when I first got involved with this in 1996, hardly anybody knew anything about it, and there were hardly any products on the market. And in a way, that was easier. But today, you can go to the internet and you can find products that are claimed to do just about everything. But the trouble is that they don't all work, and some of them can even make your exposure worse. So the moral of the story is, don't just buy something because it's advertised as being marvelous and will fix all your problems, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it will. Now, to give you an example, in the Middle Ages, people used to buy a rabbit's foot and they'd tie them around their neck and they'd wear it around to protect them from the plague. Now, did it protect them from the plague? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but I would be thinking no. But they spent their money on these products because somebody had told them that it would work. And it's the same with this. There are a lot of products out there that don't work and can't work. And if you do need to buy something, make sure it works. So make sure it's specific for the problem that you have. And people are always ringing me up and saying, oh, I want to buy some shielding paint or some shielding fabric to fix this problem. And I need to say to them, well, it won't work because it's not right for that problem. It'll fix other problems, but not that one. So the solution needs to be specific. Also, if you're buying something, look for the test reports. Look for some sort of evidence that this thing works, because otherwise it's just guesswork. It mightn't be doing anything useful for you at all. So that brings us to shielding, which I mentioned a moment ago. Now, tip number 8 is be really, really cautious about shielding. So don't go dashing out tonight and buying shielding products. And I'm telling you that as somebody who actually sells these things. So there are great shielding products on the market, and there are shielding paints, there are shielding fabrics that you can make into curtains, and shielding window films, shielding bed canopies, and we have these, but this shielding is probably the last thing that you would be looking at doing, and certainly don't do it now. So here's why. If you could imagine right now shielding your entire house, shielding the walls and the ceiling, floors if you're in an apartment, would that be a good thing? So you might think, oh, that's great. That's going to shield me from all of the radiation out there, which it will. But what it's going to do is it's going to trap the radiation from all your wireless devices inside. And that radiation will bounce against the shielded wall and it will bounce back in. So potentially you could increase your exposure. So if you want to protect yourself from what's happening outside outside your home, the place to start is by reducing your exposure inside your home. And I know that sounds a bit odd when I say that to people. They're usually a bit surprised, but it's like charity. Charity begins at home. Protecting your family begins at home, inside the home. So shielding's good, but don't rush into it. Right. Tip number 9 is grow your kids. Now, what do I mean by grow your kids? I mean, encourage your kids to develop in ways that are actually being stunted by too much time on devices. And that means get them out into nature. Now, nature is actually an antidote for stress. So wireless device use has been linked with stress. If you want the antidote, go into nature, spend some time out in nature, and that helps to relax and counteract those that stress. Give your kids a chance to develop their imagination. Too much device use can actually reduce the imagination. So you want them out there, you want them reading books, you want them playing imaginative games, playing with friends, interacting person to person, learning to read people's body language, playing physically, using their bodies, building up their muscles, building up the muscles of their fingers by learning to use blocks and jigsaw puzzles and all those sorts of things, learning how to engage with other people. So these are really important skills that I guess have been acquired naturally over time, but kids these days aren't getting a chance to develop these as much as they were in the past. So you might have to make a bit more of an effort these days. Right, what else can we do? Well, think about others. Now, I showed you before that there are some symptoms that people experience when they're exposed to radiation. And those are things like headaches and depression and irritability, some pain and nausea, things like that. Now, some people are more vulnerable to this radiation than others, and some people are more affected. So it's like people who are sensitive to peanuts and they develop peanut allergies. Well, some people react really, really badly to this radiation, even to minute levels. Now, in my network, and this is one of the reasons I keep on doing this work, we have a lot of people who are very sensitive to this radiation. And we've got some people who are so sensitive that then they find it really hard to go out in society. So they can't use a bus or a train because of the Wi-Fi or all the mobile phones that people will be using. They can't go into shopping centres for the same reasons. They can't even turn up at support meetings because other people at the meeting are using mobile phones. So you can just think about the implications of those. If you can't go out in society, then your life is really, really restricted. So what this means is that the wireless devices that you might be using are affecting other people. So think about that. We talked before about keeping your mobile phone, for example, away from the head of your baby or away from your vital organs, but keep it away from other people too. If you're sitting on a train next to someone and that someone might be elderly, they might be sick, they might have cancer, we don't know, that someone could be quite affected by the radiation from your phone. So be aware that what you do has consequences, not just for yourself and your family, but for the wider community as well. What else can you do? Well, be informed. This is a really important issue in my opinion. You know, I'm a bit biased. We've got lots of information. We've got information on our website. We publish blogs that are emailed out once a week that tell about the latest development, maybe the latest study that came out. We've got podcasts, we've got newsletters, we've got social media, we've got an online course. These are all ways that you can learn more about this issue and that you can become informed so that you can then make better, more informed decisions for your home and your family. What else can you do? Well, tip number 12 is tell other people. If you tell other people and they tell other people and they tell other people, we're going to reach a much bigger audience than just me sitting here talking to you tonight. And I think this is so important because this is a message that doesn't get out in mainstream media, unfortunately. So if we want to get it out, it's really up to us to help spread the word. So I would love it if you could help let other people know how they can be safer too. So that's tip number 12. Now, with all those tips that we've mentioned, I wonder if you've got any ideas already about what you will do to reduce your family's exposure. So when you go home tonight, what might be the first thing you do? Perhaps you'll start tonight. Perhaps you'll think about some steps that you might take over the next few days. So my question to you is, what are you going to do as a result of tonight's talk? And what about jotting it down so that you have got something to remind yourself? And I would love to hear your thoughts on whether there are things that you think that you could do now that would make a positive difference to your home and your family. So Fiona, I'll hand over to you for a moment.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. We might give everyone a couple of minutes to think on that one. I don't have writing music, unfortunately, and then
I can
have
put
a
some
little
music on.
discussion.
I've got one ready to go.
Okay.
Good.
Need to go backwards to go forwards. No one died when they didn't have mobile phones, so we can get by without the bloody things. Find other things to do. Go for a walk. Play a board game. Talk normally as a human being. Get away from this as much as be anywhere else. Get back to being human again.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because every time I walk down the street, or if I perhaps drive down the street, I'm seeing people who are on their mobile phone, crossing the street, looking at the screen of their mobile phone, not looking at the cars around them, not looking at other people, not engaging with the real world. And I think that to me is a little bit alarming. Let's get back to reality, and let's remove ourselves from this artificial world of our games.
Other thoughts about what to do? Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, I think.
Can you hear us okay, Lynn? Because we're just
Yes.
talking towards the laptop. The microphone there. Just let me know if you can hear Rob okay.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
And, I think with technology, it's neither good nor bad. It's how we use it.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Yes, it's up to us. And that's why I said at the start that we've got the power to decide how we're going to use it in our homes. And we've got the power to decide how much we're going to reduce our family's exposure, if at all. And that's your decision.
Yeah, I think I try to use it just as usually don't have it a lot of times. I just have it sitting in the car. And I just use it as a backup application rather than when I'm out, as someone said, when I'm out walking, I'm out walking.
I don't.
I switch mine off every night.
This is
My mobile.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm Pam. I switch my mobile off every night, and I put it in a Faraday bag. And
Yes, it is a Faraday bag.
and my mobile has a cover as well to stop the EMF.
Yeah, it doesn't stop the radiation. I've got one on my phone too. I can actually show you if you like, if you can see. Just pull it out of the drawer where it lives most of the time. So this is the cover. Now you can see there's a little symbol down here that tells me that's the shielded side. So what this does, and what most mobile phone shields do, is they stop the radiation getting into your head. So if you hold the mobile phone against your head, it's blocking the absorption of the radiation on that side. But this side here is unshielded because the mobile phone needs to be talking to the mobile phone tower. Otherwise, you'd have no signal, you'd have no message. So there's still radiation. If you were to look at a picture of the radiation, you'd see it's still sort of all around, but there's less absorption into your brain. So it's, you know, these are good if you're holding it against your head, or let's say you've got it in a pocket, but, you know, hopefully you wouldn't do that anyway.
Who else has got an idea of what you'll do when you get home to reduce your or your family's exposure?
Kate is my name. We put off getting Wi-Fi for a very long time, but you know, now our kids have got mobile phones, and it's very tricky. And so I'm just thinking, do we turn it off at night?
We do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
Where do you turn it off, Kate?
turn the Wi-Fi off.
Turn the Wi-Fi off at night.
Where
Then?
do you turn it off?
No, she's asking, is it a good idea to turn it off at
Oh,
night?
I
Right?
I turn it off all the time. Look,
I always do.
if you turn it off at night, it comes back to where do you turn it off? Most modems these days have got, or a lot of modems have got little buttons that will say, you know, you're turning the radiation off on with this button, but they often don't work. So you might think that radiation's turned off, and it might not be. If you actually want to stop the radiation coming out, you need to turn it off at the power point. So that is the best way of doing it. Honestly, some of these modems are emitting so much radiation that you would be horrified what's coming out of them. I'm not saying that's true of everybody's, but some of the new ones are. If you want to use Wi-Fi, I'd say just turn it on when you actually have to use it, and leave it off the rest of the time, because turning it off at nighttime only means that it's safe when it's not being used, which is kind of counterproductive. Now, if you had kids, and when my kids are older, if you set up a safe space where people can work, you know, kids can work, they can do their homework in this space here that's connected to the internet, then they don't need Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi and internet are two different things. You don't have to have Wi-Fi to have the internet.
Yeah. So Lynn, do you mean to use the mobile data instead of using the Wi-Fi if you want internet?
No. You'd get a lot of radiation from that.
Cable.
So I'm a bit confused by what you mean.
Cable.
Oh, okay. Oh, I showed a picture a little while ago of the radiation-free equipment.
Oh, you mean so use a cable? Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, so if you had a modem or router, let's say, that doesn't emit any radiation, and that's cabled to your computer, which doesn't emit any radiation, then you've got access to the internet. You've got a landline phone if you want it to connect in, but you've got no exposure. So it would be a safe way for kids, you know, say to do their homework or whatever they might do. I know these days a lot of parents say to me, oh, we've got to have Wi-Fi because we've got to have the internet everywhere, by which they mean they've got to have it in all the kids' bedrooms. But there was a documentary a few weeks ago that I don't know if you saw. It was by Todd Sampson, and he was looking at technology, and he wasn't so much looking at the health aspects that I'm looking at, but he was looking at some of the other risks of technology. And he was saying, you know, get this stuff out of kids' bedrooms. So that's what we used to do. We used to have safe stations set up where people could use this technology. Maybe that's a solution that we could be going back to. Just a suggestion.
Okay.
I have a question. How affected are we by our neighbours' Wi-Fi?
Question.
Yeah, well, you will get radiation from your neighbour's Wi-Fi probably, but it pales in comparison with what you'd be getting from your own Wi-Fi. So, and the other thing is, you could, if you wanted to, you could shield your neighbour's Wi-Fi, but you can't shield your neighbour's Wi-Fi if you're generating it yourself, because, as I said, you'd be trapping your own Wi-Fi signals inside that would be reflected back into your house, potentially increasing your exposure. So if you want to shield your neighbour's Wi-Fi, you first need to deal with your own Wi-Fi.
Any other wonderful ideas about what you'll do when you get home to reduce your exposure? I think I might actually find my old cables. Seeing as my laptop sits in the one spot anyway, I reckon I might find my old cables, which are probably in the cupboard, and find the spot they plug into and see if it works.
Sounds like a good idea. And then get into the settings of your laptop and turn the wireless off the
What was
settings.
that?
Sorry?
And what was that bit did you say after that?
Well, turn the wireless off your laptop. So get into the settings of your laptop and disable the wireless and, you know, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth and so on.
I've got a wireless printer. I've been overseas and I haven't connected it back up yet, but I don't think I will. I can just plug that into my laptop when I need to print, which is hardly ever. I don't need the wireless printer.
Yes, I have a wireless printer too, which is right next to my computer.
That's right. I don't. Mine's in the cupboard in the other room, but I don't need that way. So I can live with that.
Yeah.
I can't live without my wireless now.
You're saying that you need a computer that will connect cables,
I do.
and to what else? What do the cables connect to?
Printer.
Do you have to have NBN or something?
That's
No.
But for internet you do, you have to have, yeah.
I've used my printer with a cable, so I know that I can.
With the printer, sorry, I hope I'm not talking over anyone. I'm trying not to. With the printer, there's a real problem because you used to be able to get nice, safe, wired only printers, but it's almost impossible to get a printer now that's not wireless. So even if you connect it with cables, the wireless is still coming out of the printer when it's turned on. So your only solutions really are to keep it right away from your body and, you know, maybe have a long cable or just to keep it turned off when you're not actually using it if you don't use it very much.
Well, I hardly use, I actually go to Officeworks and do my printing. I don't even know how to print.
I don't
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Any other great motivations from today? And we might move on to, you've got a little bit more to present, I guess, Lynn.
No, really, that was it. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone because it's been really nice to be talking to you about this. And just to let you know that I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Actually, let me show you my thank you slide because I thought you might like the picture.
So, Lena, big thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. I think there may be a few more questions. If you're okay to we'll dive into a little bit of a Q&A. Is that fine for you?
Sure. Yep, that's fine.
So we're just going to open it up and just talk towards the microphone on the on the wireless laptop over there.
I don't think mine has an ether.
Just introduce your name first.
Yeah, hi Lynn, my name's Tony. We really appreciate what you're doing for us because for us to be more aware of how we can protect is very much appreciated. My question, I've got a few, but one of them specifically is got to do with the smart meters that have been installed in our houses by the Blinken government, especially for solar power, etc. I heard that there is a possibility that we are able to shield those smart meters from then entering the radiation into our home.
Oh, it's much easier than that, Tony. Because is everyone in New South Wales? I mean, you're physically present, I guess. Yeah. In New South Wales, we don't have to worry about that. The word smart meter means different things to different people. So the first recommendation is don't ever use the word smart meter because what you're talking about will be different to what that person's talking about. You can have, I guess you could say I've got a smart meter, but it's not a wireless smart meter. It's a perfectly fine smart meter. The smart meters that replace the analog meters that we had actually have lower magnetic fields. So that's a good thing about them. Most of them have wireless radiation, but you don't have to have wireless radiation in your electricity meter in New South Wales. So what you can do is just ring up your electricity company and say, get rid of it. I want this disconnected from my property, which will mean that they manually read your meter, which is fine. You might have to pay a little bit more for that, but you won't have to put any shielding in place at all. Now, you'll still have magnetic fields, which we haven't been talking about in this talk, but they come from electrical sources. So they'll still be there, but they'll be less than the magnetic fields that you had with an analog meter. And you can measure those too if you want to see if you've got a problem, but it's the wireless part of smart meters that is what most people have been concerned about. Does that make sense, Tony?
Yeah, it does. The only slight, I suppose, query I've still got is we put some solar panels on top of our house a couple of years ago, and we were told that no, there is no option to have, let's say, any other thing than what was installed. And I'm assuming what they installed is going to have radiation frequencies, etc. So I can't actually tell you what was installed other than the old analog type meters that were there for a long time. They basically took all those away and installed new ones and basically said to me that you've got no other option, and they actually put another device inside the house, which I'm assuming is some form that registers probably what's coming in and out with the excess flow with regards to what we're storing and what we're making while the sun's out. So anyway, that's why I'm a little unsure about what was installed, and you know, is it what you're saying that I can then ring the electricity company up and say, I want back out?
Yeah. Well, first of all, solar can be installed without any wireless. I've got solar, I've got no wireless. So it doesn't have to be wireless. But most these days, just about everything is wireless because it's easier. It requires less work. So first of all, what you can do is you ring up your electricity company, just ask them, don't use the word smart meter, say, is my meter a remote reading monitor? You know, or does it emit wireless radiation? Because they should be able to answer that. If it is, which it probably is based on what you're telling me, then just say, as I said, get rid of it. I don't want that function. So it's not that you're asking to replace the meter, you're asking to disconnect the wireless function from the meter. Right? So you don't need that. Now, with solar, you might have wireless from the inverter, and the inverter might be talking to your meter. So you could, again, disconnect the wireless from the inverter and get that communication cabled in. So that would be a conversation to have with your electrician.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right. I have another question about mobile phone towers. I'm fairly close to one, and I was on the app to mail out for information about what's happening, but it seems to be restricting the information as much as it.
Where were you looking for the information?
The Arkansas website, they're sending me date when any changes were made.
Oh, yeah. You can go to the RFNSA website. So that's R for radio, F for frequency, N for national, S for site, A for archive. And you just go into that. You can type your postcode or the postcode of the phone tower or the address of the phone tower, and it will tell you exactly what's there, what the technologies are, how much radiation is calculated to come from them. So you can find that information out. You should be able to find it really easily.
Yeah, that's the one I meant actually, but then, yeah, they're not including as much information.
Sorry, what was that?
Getting out as much information on that RFNS way.
Yeah. Each tower that goes up is supposed to have an EME report that has that information in it.
Yeah. It's got a lot of contractions on it, but all of a sudden, is that the new 5G technology?
Oh, look, I don't know. That I was on the RFNSA website, I think it was last week, and I just typed in lots and lots of phone towers and random ones, and it's really clear what's there. I don't think they're trying to disguise 5G antennas or anything like that, because there's heaps of information on the RFNSA website about that. So if you can't find that information, that I would think that that would be quite unusual. But I can't imagine there's anything untoward going on there, because, as I said, there's the information about 5G phone towers all across Australia.
Excuse me, what was that website again, please?
rfsa.com.au. So it's radio frequency.
National Site Archive.
Sorry.
RFNSA.
That's right.
RFNSA.com.au.
Thank you.
Do you have to have a 5G phone to get connected by 5G?
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes, sorry.
Do you have to have, did you hear the question, Lynn?
I think it was, do you have to have a 5G phone? Is that the
To
question?
be affected by 5G?
No. Oh, no. Well, no. Look, there's a lot of wrong information about 5G out there, because what is in Australia is a bit different to what's in some places overseas. So some of what you read in overseas doesn't apply to our situation here, which might be a conversation for another talk. But radiation's radiation. The radiation is going to be affecting people whether they've got a 5G phone or not. But it could additionally affect people who do have a 5G phone, because they're using something called beam steering technology, which might be what you're talking about, where the phone tower actually, the radiation, the beam from the phone tower will actually follow a person that's using 5G. So if there's somebody walking down the street with a 5G phone against their head, the beam will be following them as they walk down. So it doesn't mean that other people aren't exposed, no, but it does mean that you might get more exposure than perhaps in the past if you're using 5G technology.
So, Lynn, is there somewhere that does your website have the information that would be most relevant to us here in Australia about 5G?
Yeah. There's on our website, I don't think I can easily get into it and show you now, but
Yeah, because it'd be good to know where to find, because as you're saying, if there's information that we're getting that's not relevant, it'd be good to know where to find the most relevant information so we can be informed properly.
Yeah. There's a tab, I think it's the tab at the top of our website. If you go into emraustralia.com.au, on the top, you'll see there's 5G. So just click on that and there's a whole lot of information, but there's a free white paper that you can download, and it's just got the issues and it's got references and resources. And also in our blog page, which again, you'll see across the top, we do articles about 5G all the time as they crop up. So if there's a new study that comes out, or, somebody discovers something about 5G or writes something about 5G, it'll be on our website. So you can just use the search tool to find that, but there's heaps there.
Excellent. Thank you.
I just have a question then. The the device that reads the frequency that you showed at the beginning of the presentation, how easy is it to get hold of one of those?
Well, depends how quick you are. There's a bit of a situation with this wireless meters. We've got a few of them in stock. I think we've got about 7 or 8 of them at the moment. And then once they're gone, and they're not being manufactured from this point on. We have got, and that's because there's a new meter that you'll also see on our website that measures 5G. Now, 5G is not one thing. 5G is a whole lot of different frequencies. So it'd be like saying fruit makes me sick. Well, maybe fruit doesn't make you sick. Maybe bananas make you sick. So with 5G, it's not that we can say all of 5G is a problem. It might be these frequencies or those frequencies or those frequencies that are the problem. And we haven't got some of those frequencies in Australia in a widespread manner yet. So this meter will measure 5G that's here now, the lower 5G frequencies, and it also has the capacity to measure the 5G of the future. So, you know, carriers like Optus have bought 26 gigahertz spectrum, so for 5G, so it will be able to measure that. So what we're doing is kind of phasing out the old wireless meters that were easier to use, to be perfectly frank, like the one I showed you. And we have this new one. So they're both useful for what you need to know what's happening around your homes now. I would go with the easy one that I showed you, which is called the Acousticom 2, but keep in mind there are only a few of them left.
So
Where else can we buy?
Yeah.
Like,
is there anywhere, like if we can't buy that particular one, is there a similar one that we can get from somewhere else?
Well,
Like,
this is the problem. You don't really want to, because there are a lot of meters on the market and a lot of them aren't very reliable.
Okay.
You
Right.
don't, if you spend a lot of money and get a reliable one, it's only going to measure the lower 5G frequencies that, granted, are here now, but it won't be a future-proof one. It won't measure the higher ones for the future. There's only this one meter in the world that is available to the likes of us, that, you know, can be a handheld meter that can be used by people who are not scientists or electrical engineers. There's only one in the world that does that, and it's on our website. It's called the FM5. So it's a bit more than we need at the moment, but is there any point in getting a good quality one that does any less, because we will need something like this for the future. So I hope that's not too confusing.
But does it measure other EMR though, other than 5G?
Oh, well, the wireless meters measure a whole range of frequencies. So they generally measure a lot of frequencies, and 5G operates at a lot of frequencies, but it doesn't measure the higher ones that will be coming in the future.
Okay, right. So if I got one, I could measure my laptop or my modem or my phone or anything like that as well.
Yeah.
Even though they're not connected to 5G, like they're just devices, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, well 5G is very similar to the things that we've been, to the frequencies we've been using in the past. It's reused the old 2G frequencies, for example, and it's operating at around 3.5 gigahertz, which are not all that different from what we've had in the past. So the 5G that's around now it's similar stuff to what we've already got and what we've had.
Okay, right.
can I just ask roughly how much we're talking to get one of these things that measures what we've got in it? It's like, what's the cost?
Which one? The one that I showed you today is 330. That's the economical one. The fancy one that will measure the higher 5G frequencies, what we've got now, and the higher ones, that's 1550.
Wow.
Mm.
We should buy.
Well, we
stock
should.
up and share it.
Community one.
I've been on that,
Yeah,
and
I would be.
look it out.
that's right.
Yeah, Jan, it's in like that, it's Jan. So with 5G, and we're going to be a smart city here in Newcastle, does that mean we're going to be getting zapped 24/7?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that getting around that one? The answer is yes.
Get out of Newcastle, eh?
Well, look, I mean, we're moving in that direction in society anyway. So the intention is for us to have lots of 5G antennas around our homes. So no matter whether it's a smart city or not a smart city, there will be wireless radiation coming into our homes from outside. And this is where I think that down the track, we're all going to have to look at shielding. So I'm going to have to wait and see what happens in my street and where the towers are. I'm going to have to measure, just like all of you. And if it's coming into my home, I'm going to have to shield it. So that's that's the future. But remember, I said that our biggest problem is the radiation inside our homes. So if you want to shield your home against, the smart city or whatever else might be out there, the thing to do would be try and get it out of your house now, so that if you need to shield, you don't have to worry about your internal sources being amplified.
Strategy.
That's a good idea.
Great idea.
I understand, it's Pam speaking again,
Hi,
that the
Pam.
5G component attaches to telegraph poles because it has to be quite close. And so when it comes to that point, we'll just see the 5G attachment on the, I said telegraph, I meant light poles.
That's the intention. How long it takes them to do that everywhere, I don't know. Look, it's quite worrying, to be honest. And I think I'm going to be out there with a meter measuring everything as we start to move in that direction too. But as I said, it can be shielded. So it's going to come back to measuring what is actually coming into your home. Is anything coming into your home from that? Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's pointing in another direction. Who knows? So we are going to go back to, taking back our power. We are going to have to monitor what's going on and address it. But we're talking about smart cities, but there's also the intention to create smart networks inside the home. So you probably know about that, the Internet of Things, with your smart fridge and your smart washing machine and your smart light globes and all of those things. So yeah, we're going to have to actually monitor what's coming in, and that means, when you buy light globes, looking at the packaging and if they got words like gigahertz on them or megahertz, it will be gigahertz. And then we're going to have to say, well, have you got an alternative one? So I do that when I'm buying an appliance. I always say, I want something that's not emitting anything. I want you to demonstrate that it's not, or that it can be turned off. Talk to the technical team of the manufacturers, and use a meter to check to see, is this device actually giving off wireless radiation? We had one lady, and her children were so hyper sensitive to radiation, all sorts of problems, and she'd gone to extraordinary lengths to reduce the radiation in her home. But then she found that she actually had a smart fridge. Her fridge was irradiating her kids and causing problems. So, we can't take anything for granted these days. I think we just have to be conscious that it could be trying to get into our homes, but we've got a choice about whether it does or not.
So Lynn, it's Simon here. So essentially, it's pretty simple. Don't be smart, be dumb.
No, don't be smart, be wise.
It's Fiona speaking. We actually already have 5G street lights in our street, and they are rolling them out all over the place.
Really?
I'm just thinking that that sort of frequency, it goes through the walls, doesn't it?
Well, the thing with see, again, it depends on what frequency you're talking about. With the higher 5G frequencies, it's got really tiny wavelengths. So if it's affecting the body, it's likely to not penetrate much more than the skin. So our authorities say, oh, well, that's great. It's really only going as far as the skin. So we don't have to worry about effects on health. I don't think that's necessarily true, because the skin is part of the immune system and performs vital functions. But what I'm saying is it doesn't penetrate very far. So, I don't actually know how some of those 5G frequencies are actually going to get into the home, or if they are. So this is where I don't think that we can look outside and say, oh, gosh, there's an antenna there, or there's a this there. We don't need to automatically panic. I think what we can do is say, okay, I can see that's there. Let's measure and see, are we getting anything from it? or is it, you know, is it not penetrating our homes? Let's see what's there from all of the sources, because we might be getting more from our neighbours' Wi-Fi than we are from an antenna out there. You know, it's not about what you can see, it's about what you can measure.
Thank you for that. That makes sense.
Pauline again, I was reading or listening to about the Internet of Bodies. When people get, you know, the mark of the beast, the
Microchip.
the chip. So that's another thing again.
Absolutely, but you know, again, let's hope we have choice about that. We have the power to decide what we're going to do to our bodies and what we're going to have, what technology we're going to use in our homes or our cars and so forth. So I'm of the opinion that we are powerful and that we can make decisions that are good for us. I have no doubt that some people will like to have those chips implanted, and we know lots of cases where that's happened in the past, even going back quite a few years. So I'm sure there'll be more of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be part of that.
Lynn, just to bring you back to the question about the home phone. So in the next century, it's Monica, by the way, in the next century, when we get NBN,
At your place.
at our house, yes, we're 9 months down the track and still waiting. So when they come, can I organise for them to install a landline? How does that work?
What would normally happen is NBN's connected to your home, and in most cases, NBN is not wireless. So to connect to NBN, you need a modem or a router, and the ones that you get commercially will be pretty much all wireless, but the ones that we have and still have managed to have at the moment are not wireless. They have no wireless capacity. So you can cable from the NBN connection, you can cable to a modem or a router. Then when you've got that in place, you can cable a phone to it. So it's a little bit more complex than that. You might need a couple of pieces of equipment. You might need different things in different homes, because NBN connections are different in different homes. But we have a wonderful, wonderful tech guy called Luke who works out individual packages for people. So every home basically needs that to be worked out, especially. Okay. And then you can just say, look, we're interested in doing that. And then Luke will work out what kind of equipment that you would need at your address and basically tell you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll talk to you about that when we get the NBN in 50 years' time.
Lynn, are dumb phones dumb?
Oh, do you mean mobile phones or landline phones?
They call them dumb phones.
Get back to dumb phones.
There's no internet on them. There's just
better.
So would they still have wireless?
Oh yeah. Wireless is just another word for radiation. So any mobile phone can only connect using wireless radiation. So the advantage is if it doesn't have, capacity for emails or photos or whatever, it just means that you're using it less. But when you are using it, the radiation will still be there.
Sorry.
Where
are you, Lynn?
Sorry?
Again? Where are you located again?
I'm in Sydney. I'll show you one of the safest mobile phones in the world. Would you like to see it? Oh, I think I showed you before. It's my mobile phone. And the reason it's one of the safest mobile phones in the world is because I hardly ever use it, a couple of times a year. And I forget that I have it and it stays in my drawer all the time. And that's a wonderful use of a mobile phone, because if I did need it, it's there. But it certainly doesn't irradiate me, and no one rings me on it because I never, ever give anyone my mobile phone number, because I actually don't know what my mobile phone number is. I would have it written down somewhere, but so it's sometimes not the technology that's the issue, it's the way that it's used.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm the opposite. I need my phone. I've got a laptop I bought 2 years ago and I have not even switched it on because my type of work, I get home, I'm on my own. The last thing I want to do is look at a laptop. So my thing is I'm the opposite. I'm using my phone all the time as a means to connection, as opposed to a laptop. So this is what I'm worried about with just life.
You use it in job as well.
Well, the thing is, my job, I can't have a mobile phone. So I'm actually grateful that I can't use a phone while I'm massaging and it's not in the room. So it's a positive, but yeah, I don't even use my laptop. I don't need
But
it.
just because you've got the phone with you all the time doesn't mean you can do it.
Yeah, I just keep it off, but I mean, it's still pretty radiating stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what we need to measure. Is what it's
That's
doing.
with the mobile data. That's what I'm asking about mobile data. Only till July that I got Wi-Fi. I was using mobile data, and because I never used it from my home, but now I've used Wi-Fi, and I'm like, maybe I cancel it, just go back to mobile data.
No, don't do that. That's terrible station.
So,
No. If you're going to, it depends on what you want to do. And Sharon, I appreciate what you said, that you use it all the time, and that's choice. I don't want you to think that that I would criticize that. I'm just trying to give people options or thoughts about what could be done that might be useful. But if you don't want to use Wi-Fi, why don't you just use cabled internet without Wi-Fi? You don't need Wi-Fi to have the internet.
Yeah, on my phone.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Yeah, just a thought. Thank you.
Robert, yes.
It's Robert. Then, if your phone's turned off, if you want to go out or whatever, and turn it off and only use it when you want it, that would get a lot less radiation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Except mine's turned off pretty much all the time. Yeah. And that's the thing, because
Where you control it.
yeah, you probably don't need to have it on all the time. And you know your mobile phone use better than me, but how many times do you need urgently to be contacted by people all the time?
yeah.
And again, if you had, say, for example, if you had a radiation-free setup, like a landline phone inside your home, then maybe you don't need your mobile phone on during the day.
Like we used to.
Yeah, exactly. Which worked fine.
Yeah, they got rid of the phone boxes too,
I know, that's right.
which is annoying. And I think I think the phone boxes even use internet as well.
Oh, they do. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't put 50 cents in anymore to call someone. You just, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So after always having to use it.
Yes.
Telephone box. Oh, dear.
I think it's interesting with mobile phones, because it's interesting the way we think about them, the thought that, well, we have to have it with us all the time. We have to have it by our bed at night time. We have to be contactable 24/7. And that's, you know, for those of us who can remember pre-mobile phone era, we didn't ever think that. We didn't ever think we had to be contacted all the time. So for me, it's really interesting watching the change in people's attitudes to being available and when it's okay to ring people, when it's not okay to ring people. But it's not that it's an immutable fact that you have to do this. It's a choice. It's our choice as individuals, and it's our choice as society, and it will evolve over time. It's not going to stay the way it is now. Our contactability will evolve again.
So again, I think a lot of new technology, actually, history, there's a surge of enthusiasm for it.
Sorry, I missed that bit, Robert. And a lot of new technology was.
There's a surge of enthusiasm for people who must overuse it, and then they get sick of it, then they step back away from it. I think possibly you look at the kids, they're communicating all the time, and to me it's just shallow communication. There's no in-depth communication between people anymore. Just here's a picture of what it has to be, all that sort of stuff. And
My son doesn't want one. He's probably seen what I do.
Yeah.
No, but because he's seen what it does to your so he doesn't want to come to phone. And I think he's concerned about the radiation. And I had a question. We've got a landline, but it's a cordless. So is that?
No, cordless phones are, generally speaking, they're absolutely terrible, because the thing with a mobile phone is that, well, you could turn it off. A cordless phone, you can't. It's sitting there turned on all the time, and it's emitting a lot of radiation 24/7. So it's emitting it from the base and it's emitting it from the handset. So if you've got the handset against your head, you could actually be getting more radiation than from a mobile phone, because it doesn't have adaptive power control, which mobile phones do. So even if it's just sitting there on the bench, it's irradiating you. If you measured it, I think you'd be quite surprised what was coming out of it. So the first thing you can do when you go home tonight is pull it out of the wall.
That was money well spent.
So we go back to the normal landline.
Where it was on the wall and you could only lift it off the wall, and you were attached to the wall, and you could just, you had to sit where the phone was. You couldn't walk around with it. Yeah, and then do the old dial, and then you have to start again when you buggered the
That
number
was
off.
better anyway. You had to fight with someone, you slam it down and instead of pressing a button.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as satisfying doing that.
Are there any more questions for Lynn? We might be able to have. Oh, great. Yes, we do. Steve,
do you know if there are landlines you can get that are just the old with a handle and all the old?
Yeah,
deal?
can you actually get it?
Yeah,
Like-
You mean, you mean like this one?
Oh my God. Oh, there you go.
You still get them, do you?
Yeah.
You can still get them.
Yeah, it's getting. Sorry, I just put it down again. It's getting harder to get them. You could, until fairly recently, you could get them at Officeworks, so you can try there and see if there's one close to you. There, it is a bit harder now. We can get hold of some. We've got our tech guy looking at supplies, which are the ones that are going to be most compatible with NBN. So if you can watch this space, we will have some that will be available soon. We just haven't kept them in the past because you could buy them at places like Officeworks.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right. Shall we make that a wrap then? Any final words, Lynn?
I'd just like to thank you for your attention. I have to say, it's always a great pleasure to talk to people who are interested in this issue and, you know, have an interest in reducing their exposure. So I hope that it's been helpful, and I have really enjoyed my night with you. So thanks.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.